Take a moment right now to slow down and breathe easily. Set aside all the noise in your mind for a short while and gently turn your focus inward toward what you have truly been feeling deep beneath everything else. You may have noticed something lately that is difficult to put into simple words. There is a tightness that enters your chest without any warning at all. A sudden memory of a certain person appears out of nowhere. There is also a restless and electric kind of feeling that hums quietly just below the surface of your ordinary day. That feeling is not random, and it is not only in your imagination. It is a clear signal from somewhere deeper than your thinking mind. Energy is moving toward you at this very moment, and your deeper self is already noticing it before your conscious thoughts have had time to fully understand what is happening. Your inner self operates on a level that goes far beyond conversation or visible signs. It picks up information that travels faster than anything taking place on the outside. This is why you can feel that something is shifting with this person before there is any clear or visible evidence of it. That soft pull inside your chest, the one you so often dismiss as wishful thinking, is actually your inner awareness telling you that this connection still has significant and unfinished parts left to unfold. This is how these things almost always begin. Just before a meaningful change appears in the visible world, a quiet pressure begins building within you first. It feels like an energetic tension that you sense without being able to explain it clearly or completely. That is precisely where you find yourself right now. Small openings are forming in what used to feel like complete and unbreakable silence. New paths are beginning to emerge where there once appeared to be only solid and immovable walls. Your place in this person's life has not disappeared the way you may have quietly feared it had. While you were managing your own questions and learning to live inside the uncertainty, something was changing within them at the same time. The protective walls they had carefully constructed around their heart, built from fear and pride and the deep need to remain in control, have been slowly coming apart from the inside. The powerful feeling you have been picking up on lately exists because they are now holding emotions they can no longer keep stored away. What is real and true between you is rising to the surface whether they feel prepared for it or not. The bond you share goes far beyond ordinary reasoning, and it is not something that distance or the passage of time can quietly remove on its own. To fully understand why this shift is happening now and why the days ahead will feel noticeably different from what came before, it helps to look honestly at what this person has been going through during the quiet time between you. They have been moving carefully, maintaining some distance while still watching from the background. They were caught between the uncomfortable weight of their own fears and a deep pull toward you that they worked very hard to convince themselves did not exist. During the time apart, they filled their days with activities that appeared fine from the outside. They looked composed and in control, like someone who had simply moved forward and settled into a new rhythm of life. But that appearance was only a covering. It was a mask they held in place even for themselves so they could keep believing that pulling away had been the right and reasonable decision. As more time passed, that mask grew heavier to carry. Underneath it, a quiet internal struggle was taking place that no one around them could see or reach. Night after night, they wrestled with their genuine emotions, using logic to justify the distance and telling themselves it was the safer and wiser road to take. Some of this came from pride, some from fear, and some from simply not knowing how to handle feelings that felt far too large and consuming to manage without losing their footing. That situation occurs far more often than most people realize or admit. Sometimes a person steps away, not because they feel nothing at all, but because they feel far too much for comfort. Being truly seen and understood by another person can feel deeply unsettling at first. It can stir up old fears about losing control or about being hurt in ways that have not fully healed. But when two people are genuinely meant to connect at a meaningful level, all the careful reasoning in the world eventually exhausts itself and loses its ability to hold the truth back. Slowly and without any single defining moment, the walls they had built around themselves began to weaken. As that happened, they started to notice that life without you felt dimmer than before and that something important was missing, something they could not easily name or find a replacement for. A new kind of awareness started to form inside them. They began to recognize that the guarded and carefully managed version of themselves they had been presenting was not who they actually were at their core. It was a role they had been performing, and it no longer felt natural or sustainable. Every effort they made to move further forward and add more distance between you was quietly interrupted by something that kept pulling their thoughts back in your direction. It was not simply missing a person the way you miss any absence. It was something that reached into their deepest understanding of who they are and what genuinely matters to them. It became a turning point, a kind of private and personal awakening that arrived without announcement. There were moments when they tried to cover those feelings by filling their time with noise and people and constant movement, but even in the middle of all that activity, comparisons kept surfacing. Thoughts they would never speak to anyone around them kept drifting back toward you. All of that was accumulating beneath the surface and building quietly toward the shift you are now beginning to sense. Something is genuinely moving now, and this time there are no easy distractions offering the same comfortable numbness they once provided. A person can only sustain avoidance for so long before the deeper parts of themselves grow completely tired from the continuous effort it demands. That is exactly where this person stands right now. The life they constructed to keep their true feelings at a safe distance is no longer working the way it once did. They had told themselves that enough space would loosen the connection, that enough silence would gradually reduce the intensity of what they felt, and that enough time would slowly dissolve your presence from their emotional world. But the opposite happened entirely. The longer the separation extended, the more defined their feelings became. Rather than fading, you became more present in their inner world. They began finding you in the small and unexpected spaces they had not prepared for, in the quiet before sleep, in conversations that suddenly felt hollow and incomplete, and in crowded places where they still found themselves feeling entirely alone. Something kept redirecting their awareness back toward you even when they actively tried to look elsewhere. That is when a deeper and more honest understanding began to take root inside them. They started to see that what existed between you was not an ordinary connection or a temporary wave of excitement. It was something that had reached into parts of them that no one else had ever been able to touch. Once that realization settled in, it changed the way they perceived everything around them. Because once a person genuinely understands that a bond is rare and truly meaningful, they cannot return to treating it as though it is replaceable or ordinary. Their thinking mind may still try to argue its case, but the heart begins to speak with a force and a clarity that ordinary logic simply cannot stand against for very long. There have been nights when they sat alone and revisited conversations you may have long since stopped replaying in your own mind. Small moments that once seemed entirely unremarkable now carry enormous weight in their memory. The way you looked at them during a difficult time, the calm that arrived with your presence without any effort on either side, the particular ease that came from being with someone in front of whom you did not have to perform or pretend. That quality of emotional safety is genuinely rare in a person's life. The hollow space it leaves behind is not something that can be filled with substitutes or distraction. They have been attempting to fill it, and it has not worked. The more they searched for that feeling in other directions, the more unmistakably clear it became what had actually been present between you. At first, pride told them they could move ahead without difficulty and that they were stronger than what they were feeling. But pride always reaches its limit eventually and meets the simple reality of genuine emotional truth. For this person, that limit has arrived. They have begun to see the connection in a fundamentally different way. It is no longer something they believe they can choose or replace at will. They are beginning to understand that meeting you changed something inside them permanently, something that cannot be reversed or decided away. While all of this has been unfolding inside them, something has also been shifting quietly within you. Even if this person still crosses your mind often and you still wonder what might come next, you are not standing in the same emotional place you once were. Something inside you has grown steadier and more settled through everything you have moved through. You have come to understand from direct experience what it truly feels like to reach towards someone who is not reaching back from the same place. You felt the deep exhaustion of carrying the majority of the emotional weight entirely on your own. Slowly, through all the confusion and the long stretches of quiet, you began drawing your own energy back to yourself. That change carries more significance than it may seem to on the surface, because when you stopped stretching beyond yourself and stopped remaining endlessly available in the hope that it would eventually be enough, everything in the energy between you began to transform in ways that neither of you may have fully noticed yet. Not in a loud or dramatic way, but because your inner self understood that your own peace carried real and genuine value. You quietly turned your energy back toward yourself, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally began caring for yourself with the same steady and patient attention you had always given to others. That single decision created a significant energetic shift between you. When someone continuously sends their focus outward toward another person, their presence can begin to feel like background noise that the other person unconsciously starts to take for granted. But when that energy quietly turns inward and becomes settled and calm, the absence of it becomes impossible for the other person to overlook or ignore. That is exactly what this person is experiencing right now. They are feeling your distance in an entirely new way because your energy no longer carries the same urgency or quiet need for their acknowledgement. Rather than making the connection feel weaker or less significant, your shift inward has pushed them to honestly face what they have actually been missing all along. This is the reason they have grown more restless in recent days. Some part of them senses that you are changing and growing into something different than what they had grown comfortable with. The version of you who waited patiently and tried endlessly and quietly made themselves smaller is becoming something else entirely. That realization carries a sudden sense of urgency because time begins to feel like it may not stretch on indefinitely. People are rarely able to recognize the true value of something while they still have easy and unlimited access to it. This person is now sitting with the full and uncomfortable weight of every moment they delayed, every feeling they suppressed, and every time fear was allowed to make their choices for them. For the first time, they cannot easily look away from that truth. Sometimes separation is not what destroys a bond, but what brings it into sharp and undeniable focus. Distance has a particular way of exposing emotional patterns that cannot continue to be avoided. It reveals exactly where fear lives inside a person and where someone has been quietly losing themselves in the search for connection. It also shows with complete clarity what each person looks like when they are standing entirely on their own, without the comfort of the other nearby. This time apart changed both of you, but in genuinely different ways. It helped you rediscover your own value without requiring their approval to confirm it. It gave them the full experience of moving through daily life without your particular energy present in it. That is why what you are feeling right now carries such deep meaning beneath the surface. Things that were buried under layers of avoidance are rising up and becoming visible. This person is beginning to understand that what they miss is not simply your attention or your availability. They miss your energy, your emotional depth, and the very specific way they felt about themselves when they were in your presence. They miss the experience of being genuinely understood without needing to carefully explain or justify every part of themselves. That realization has grown strong enough that they can no longer comfortably set it aside and move on with their day as though it does not exist. What they are moving through is not a brief mood or a handful of difficult nights. It has become something consistent that flows through their daily experience, whether they choose to acknowledge it or address it or simply try to push it further down. There are moments when they are doing something entirely ordinary and a memory of you takes their full and complete attention without any invitation. A sound, a smell, a particular word, or a specific time of day begins to carry traces of you embedded within it. At first, these moments created a kind of unease because they had wanted to believe they held complete authority over their own inner world. They wanted to be the one deciding when you entered their thoughts and when you did not. But deep emotional truth does not follow that kind of arrangement. The stronger the bond that exists between two people, the more naturally and persistently it reasserts itself on its own. They are now reaching the point where actively resisting the connection requires far more energy than it gives back in return. The walls they built for the purpose of feeling safe have started to feel less like protection and more like a self-imposed isolation. The silence they once believed was necessary has begun to feel heavy and increasingly difficult to justify. It has pushed them into genuine and unavoidable reflection. From that place, they are looking back at the shared history between you with completely different eyes. They are remembering the times when you reached toward understanding them even while they remained deliberately closed off. They recall specific moments when you offered patience they never properly acknowledged or appreciated at the time. Those memories now carry an entirely different weight because they can finally see clearly what was actually being given to them through all of that. Real and steady love can feel ordinary when it is consistently present in your daily life. Its rare and irreplaceable quality is not always visible until it is no longer there. This person is now seeing with full clarity how rare what you offered truly was. The honesty, the depth, the emotional steadiness, and the particular comfort of being with someone who allowed them to simply be themselves without performance or pretense. They have searched for pieces of that feeling in other directions and found nothing that came close each time. That repeated experience only makes your significance in their inner world clearer and harder to dispute. There were nights when they pushed themselves to move forward completely, only to find their thoughts had returned to you before the night was finished. Moments when they made a deliberate effort to sever the emotional thread and felt an even stronger pull immediately afterward. Every attempt to move away from the bond only succeeded in making them more acutely aware of its presence rather than less. This happens because what existed between you was never constructed at the surface level. Something genuine inside them truly recognized something genuine inside you. That kind of deep recognition does not simply disappear because someone decides it ought to. That shift in their understanding has changed something fundamental about the energy between you. Whether or not they have found words to express it, they feel the difference clearly. They sense that you are no longer following them emotionally in the way you once did, without question. They notice that you have become more settled within yourself, less anxious, and less dependent on their responses to maintain your own inner steadiness. And in a way that might seem surprising, that is precisely what has caused their awareness of you to intensify rather than fade. When someone releases the effort of chasing love and returns quietly to themselves, their energy takes on an entirely new and unmistakable quality. You became calm, and within that calm, they were finally left alone with the full and unfiltered strength of their own feelings, with nothing left to hide behind and no external urgency to blame or distract themselves with. Their thoughts keep returning to this connection without being invited. Their emotions will no longer allow them to remain comfortably separated from the truth that has been waiting underneath everything. The truth is becoming increasingly impossible to deny. You matter to them, not in a light or passing way, but in a way that has genuinely and permanently altered how they experience closeness with another person. That kind of realization is deeply unsettling for someone who has spent a significant amount of time working to stay in control of their emotional world, because once you fully accept how profoundly another person matters to you, you must also accept the full reality of being open, of taking a genuine risk, and of the very real possibility of being hurt. Fear has been guiding their choices for a long time now. Fear of being wounded again, fear of surrendering control, and fear of being completely and honestly seen by someone and then ultimately left alone with that vulnerability. But fear always reaches the edge of what it can sustain. The accumulated weight of continuously avoiding an honest truth grows heavier with every passing day until it exceeds the weight of simply allowing that truth to exist. That is the stage they are slowly and unmistakably moving toward right now. The silence between you has stopped feeling empty to them. It has become emotionally loud and increasingly insistent. Every day they remain disconnected from you. The awareness pressing inside them becomes more demanding and more difficult to quiet. Every attempt to push the feeling further down only generates more internal pressure instead of the relief they are searching for. This is the reason the energetic signals you have been picking up on lately have felt so strong and so persistent. Something inside them is genuinely and actively preparing for a real change, not something performed or forced, but an authentic emotional understanding that gradually and quietly reshapes how a person sees every part of their life. They are beginning to understand at a very real level that losing you would not simply mean losing a person from their daily life. It would mean losing an important part of themselves that they only discovered through the particular nature of this bond. That kind of understanding changes people in lasting and irreversible ways. Whether or not any of it has made itself visible to you yet, their heart is moving steadily toward a moment where silence becomes something they are no longer capable of maintaining. The more distance they attempt to create, the more clearly your absence announces itself to them. This has produced a genuine internal conflict where one part of them wants to remain safely behind the walls they have carefully constructed over time, while another part cannot stop imagining what it would feel like to finally reach out and close the distance. They play through different situations in their mind. They think about what they would say, how you might respond, and whether it is already far too late to say anything at all. Those questions continue turning inside them without resolution. What once felt easy and almost automatic to avoid now carries an increasing and undeniable sense of urgency pressing against the inside of everything. There are moments when they come very close to sending a message or making a move. The internal pressure builds until the silence nearly breaks open on its own, and then fear steps in at the last possible second and holds them back once more. Fear has served as their primary means of protection for a very long time now, but it is losing its grip steadily and without dramatic announcement. Not all at once, but day by day, quietly and consistently. The emotional truth between you is becoming heavier than the safety that old and familiar patterns once provided. The part of them that worked so deliberately to remain emotionally separate is beginning to come apart from the inside. Underneath all the resistance and all the careful management of distance, they already know the truth and have known it for some time. No one else has reached them in the way that you have. No one else has brought that specific combination of emotional depth, genuine recognition, and the feeling of being completely and honestly understood without needing to earn it. That knowledge has altered something fundamental for them. What once felt uncertain now feels undeniably significant. What they once worked hard to avoid now feels increasingly difficult to escape from. What they once questioned is becoming more certain with every new day that passes. Clarity always eventually produces movement. Something more honest and more real is pressing forward now, and the silence that has existed between you is becoming something neither of you will be able to maintain in the same way for very much longer.